if I have to record this video one more time. Hey there everybody, hope you're doing well. I wanted to update a video that I put out about 10 months ago, which was talking about whether Japan has been picked over when it comes to retro video games and whether prices have risen exponentially. And also it's been prompted by some of the more recent videos that I've seen crop up on YouTube from much bigger channels than mine that I have slightly gone like, interesting. And I'm well aware that as a smaller YouTuber with perhaps not the camera personality that some other people have, that my videos may come across as a little bit dry at times, but I make these videos because I honestly feel that I have something useful to add to the conversation, and because I think I can actually help you a little bit and add a little bit more nuance than perhaps some of the more mainstream videos on the topic. And that's not to rubbish other people's efforts, because actually there is a lot of good stuff out there. I'm just well aware that on camera I don't come across as the most natural person, but anyway, what I've done is I have divided this video up into clear sections, and I've put those sections into the video description as time codes, which you can tap on for the bit that you're interested in, or if you can't watch the video in one go, which is fair enough, that will help you jump to the relevant point. So my aim in this video is to help set expectations and give you some general advice if you're coming to Japan on a trip, or you're thinking of coming here and you want to do a bit of retro video game shopping, or just video game shopping in general, I guess. By the way, if you are coming or thinking of coming to Japan, I hope you have an awesome time. Anyway, first of all, I want to do a bit of reality checking, okay? So I'm going to call this section reality check, and I've divided it up 3 ways. Basically scams, pricing and availability. So let's talk about, is retro game shopping in Japan a scam? Simple answer, no it's not. I've seen this word used on some videos, and I think it's purely there because it helps generate an emotive response in the user. That's how social media generally works, that emotive content is what rises to the top, and the stuff that goes like, oh, I had a very pleasant day and I went to the lake, bubbles down to the bottom, unfortunately. Can something bubble down to the bottom? I don't know. It sinks. But anyway, yeah, if it's bubbles, it's rising, surely. Really need to work on my metaphors, don't I? Or are they similes? Metaphors, surely. Anyway, so, is retro game shopping a scam in Japan? No, it isn't. So, I think this goes 2 ways. The first way that I've seen that it's represented as a scam is that people say that the pricing in Super Potato is way out of whack and really expensive. And yes, it is. But what's new? The sky is blue. Well, in fact, today it's grey because it's cloudy, but you know what I mean. Yeah, Super Potato and other stores that ilk are well known for being the most expensive. Yes, you're probably likely to find the most extreme rarities in there, and therefore they do command a high price. But it's well known that these places do charge a lot of money. And the fact is that if you buy something impulsively in one of these stores that is well reputed to be overpriced or very expensive, then, well, you've made a decision to make that purchase. That's on you, really. And if it's the price that you're happy to pay, then, well, nobody can tell you how to spend your money, can they? Obviously, my interest is to try and help you save some money, shall we say. Yeah, I don't think you can say that Super Potato is a scam because it's expensive. It's just expensive. Now, obviously, if you go and buy something from a similar store or Super Potato itself, and then later find out you could have got the self-same item for a lot cheaper, that's just the way it goes, isn't it? So I don't think it's fair to say that these places are scams in that regard. If obviously you went to the checkout and you said, I want to buy this game, and you saw that the price tag clearly said, I don't know, 20,000 yen or something like that, and then they rang it up on the register and basically they said, oh, that's 30,000 yen, and you paid it and realised later on, okay, that would be considered a scam, or an honest mistake, which could probably be corrected. But regardless, high pricing alone does not make for a scam. So the other part of what I've seen discussed as being a scam is the condition of items, and this seems to entirely stem from the fact that, and I understand it because, you know, Japanese, if you perhaps come from, maybe you speak English, or maybe your native language is Spanish or French, or I don't know, Swahili, I'm not sure, but yeah, Japanese can be a difficult language to you know, sink your teeth into, shall we say. I should know. I've been here for over 4 years now, and I'm still very much a student of the language. But what I would recommend in that instance is that Japanese stores are usually very meticulous at putting a label on the goods to explain what the condition of something is, like operation confirmed but disk wouldn't load, or operation confirmed but no picture on the screen, or did not work at all, essentially, or scratches or discoloration, these kinds of things. It's very rare for stores to not put some kind of condition notes, especially on the items that are considered junk. So what I would recommend in that case is use your smartphone. You can use something like Google Translate, and that has like a camera function, and you can either do it live, or what I consider to be better is to take a photo with your phone, and that will translate the text, the Japanese text, into the language of your choice. It can be a bit hit and miss on handwritten labels, but it's pretty good on printed labels, and I have a really old iPhone 6, so if it works on my phone, I'm sure most of you have got much better smartphones than I have, so it's a good idea, because that way you can see what the condition of something is. And I've seen this where somebody has bought an item which is very expensive because they bought it in, say, Super Potato, for example, or Suragaya, but then found out that the item was very scratched up and the screen was partially defective. But when I actually looked at that footage a lot more closer, I could actually read the label said that it's got scratches and that the screen has got a problem, essentially. So it wasn't that the store held this information back from the purchaser, it was right there. So I understand that maybe your phone can't read what the label says. The best thing to do is to just very politely and just say sumimasen, and just try and point to what the issue is. If you want to be a little bit more fluent, or a bit more, you know, able to converse with somebody, check out a series of videos I did. There's 2 videos about speaking Japanese for retro gamers, shall we say. It's got some basic phrases in there which will really help you doing your shopping, so I'll put links in one of the corners, maybe in the middle. No, it doesn't go in the middle, it'll be in the video description at least. Yeah, you can usually say sumimasen, and you can point at the label or try and show them or something like that, and just be very sort of gracious about it, and they'll usually, if it's worth your while, they'll actually show you what the issue is. You know, they'll point and be like, oh, sodane, this kind of thing. You'll be able to go like, oh, I see, kind of thing. So it's definitely possible if the shopkeeper or the assistant will not show you, or is just like very like, oh, I don't really want to show you this, or I don't want to explain. Just walk away. Buyer beware, isn't it, at the end of the day? So in those cases, I don't think we can call retro game shopping in Japan a scam. I understand that bigger name YouTubers will have to rely a lot on their YouTube income to generate their income, quite frankly, but yeah, I think it's a bit unfair in a lot of these stores to suggest that it's a scam because of these 2 issues. It really isn't. Yeah, okay, so that's the scam aspect. Okay, pricing. Pricing is quite an interesting topic because I have lived in Japan for just over 4 years now. Not as long as some people, but a reasonable amount of time for me to be able to observe trends, shall we say. So when I first moved to Japan, I lived in the northeastern prefecture of Iwate, very much a very rural area of Japan, not very frequently visited by people coming to Japan on holiday or vacation or travelling. Yeah, pricing, that's what I was talking about. So I've been able to observe the trends. So I see some things on the internet that's all about, well, because inbound travel has restarted since the coronavirus pandemic has begun to wane, and you know, Japan's travel restrictions have, well, they've basically been removed now, have, you know, there's a lot more people coming in, and therefore that is what's causing a uptick in pricing. I don't think that's really the case, because I have noticed, even when the borders were still mostly firmly shut, like a couple of years ago, the pricing was beginning to trend upwards on some items. Okay, so this is Akumajo Dracula. This is Super Castlevania 4 outside of Japan, and fantastic game. I don't think anybody's going to say that it deserves to be 500 yen all day long with unlimited supplies. It's a well-reputed game. Now, my copy is far from perfect. I would describe it as fair, but, you know, everything's all fine. It's just the box is just a little bit knocked about in places. So I'm not a condition collector. I wouldn't even sometimes call myself a collector. I'm just somebody who really likes the Super Famicom and Game Boy, and hence I buy games. But anyway, so this used to be a game that you could find pretty much in any second-hand store, hard off, book off, independent second-hand stores, maybe not Super Potato, but you could find this game all day long for about 5,500 yen, so that's including tax here in Japan. But a couple of years ago, I began to notice that this game was beginning to trend upwards in price, you know, maybe about 8,000 yen, and then 10,000 yen. And these days, I think most places are looking for about 11,000 yen for a complete in-box with manual copy of Akumajo Dracula. So pricing has been ticking upwards on quite a lot of games for a little while now, and that's just natural market forces at play there, basically supply and demand. So I don't think it's fair to say that it's all because of inbound tourism has driven prices up. Maybe there is some impact in sort of the big cities such as Tokyo and Osaka, Kyoto, Nagoya, Kobe, so forth. It's possible that some of those stores have slightly bumped their prices up, but in general, in the more provincial cities, by provincial, what do I mean by that? So I mean like the second tier cities, not in terms of how nice they're all lovely places, but you know, they're not quite as big as the big metropolises. So I'm talking about cities like Hiroshima, Fukuoka, Nagasaki, Okayama, Sendai,
Winnersh, Taplow, Burfield.
Ah dear, some of you will get that. Yeah, they are big cities, but they're not that big. And those places, the prices, yeah, it has been ticking up a little bit, but you'll find lots of really good bargains, which I'm going to show you in the last section of this video. If you go to enough places and you bide your time and so forth. So yeah, I'd say that pricing has been trending upwards. I've actually got some examples of this. So I saw in a recent video from retrogaming, really good channel by the way. If you like retro games but you want to buy one of those modern devices, you know, like emulation handhelds, go check out Russ's channel, really good channel. But he recently came to Japan for family holiday essentially, but in it he showed some of the sights and sounds that he saw as regards the stores here, and it showed Pokemon Silver and Gold in box for around about 6,000 yen, thereabouts. Those have definitely gone up in price. But that said, the price that I paid for these is a price that I never ever saw after I picked these up. I paid 330 yen each, including tax that is, for both these games in a branch of Book Off in Morioka 4 years ago. So yeah, that was a particularly good price. They're not perfect condition, but they are complete. So on the whole, those prices have gone up a little bit. Another really good example from the self-same Book Off store is actually for the Super Famicom. I found a cartridge only of this at that store, as I just say, for 110 yen, so that's including tax. I have never seen as underpriced gem of a game like that since here in Japan in all of that time. Obviously, as you can see, I separately found the box and manual to make a complete game here. But yeah, you just don't really often luck into those kinds of bargains here in Japan. Maybe years ago it was a little bit more commonplace, but I get the feeling that it's incredibly rare these days. Although within this selection here, I have some very good bargains. Another game that I noticed, I did a video about 4 years ago in Morioka City where I also went to another second-hand store called Yorozuya. It is a chain of second-hand stores that are in that part of northeastern Japan. This was Book Off. This was Book Off, beg your pardon. And in that video, the Book Off in Morioka that I'm talking about, they had a box copy of Batman Returns, fantastic beat 'em up for the Super Famicom, 2,710 yen it said. Wow, I mean, you're never going to find this game for that price anymore. Again, it's another game that I bought the game individually, cartridge only, for about 900 yen in Yorozuya, which I was just talking about, and then separately sourced the box and manual after that, and made a complete game from it. So, prices have definitely shifted upwards, because Batman Returns now is not a 2,700 yen game here in Japan. The game that I was thinking of talking about, though, when talking about Yorozuya, is Jackie Crush. This is the third in the Crush series of pinball games from Naxat Soft, the first two being Alien Crush and Devil's Crush on the PC Engine. So this is the third in the series. Really good pinball game. And I noticed in that video that I made 4 years ago that Jackie Crush complete in box was 2,100 yen in that branch of Yorozuya in Morioka. So prices have definitely trended upwards, because I paid 3,800 yen for this, which is pretty much bottom end price now for this game, complete here in Japan at a branch of Hard Off in Satsuma Sendai in Kagoshima Prefecture about a month ago during my road trip. So yeah, that's the kind of price that, you know, would be considered a good price for this game these days. So there is definitely an upward trend. So it's not just your AAA games like your Pocky and Rockies or Kiki Kaikai Nazo no Kuro Manto, as it is in Japanese, or your Super Alestes, for example. That it's generally all games have seen some little bit of a price increase, but some more than others, and it does vary from store to store. So I'm aware that I'm talking quite a bit about this subject, but what I used to find is that Book Off, for example, and Hard Off used to be very variable in pricing. Some stores used to be very expensive, some used to be very good. As I was just talking about Book Off in Morioka, for example, long since changed that situation, because I've noticed that the prices have equalised a lot more across Book Offs and Hard Offs, despite the fact that most of them are franchise operated. They might be operated by like a group, as it were, but if you consider the whole of Japan, they are a franchise operation on the whole. But I have noticed that pricing has begun to equalise on games, but there are some branches of Book Off and Hard Off out there that still seem to have stock at old pricing, or pricing that they've just not changed kind of thing, or they're happy with the price that they've got on it, whatever. So a good example of this is, for example, what I consider staple games. So this is a good example of what I would consider a staple game for the Super Famicom, Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I picked this up along with Super Mario Kart for a very good friend of mine, who helped me, or has been helping me out so much with many things over the years. So I'm helping him put together a small core Super Famicom collection. Now these games, I'd say that Super Mario Kart on average is about 2,500 yen now in Japan, box complete. And Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, I'm not entirely sure what prices I've been seeing, but I'm going to say around about that 1,800 yen mark, which is still incredibly cheap for the quality of game. But that's definitely more expensive than what I paid, say, 4 years ago for these games, which would have been around about the 800 yen mark, box complete. But these are fully complete, minty condition. This one was bought from a branch of Hard Off in Matsuyama City in Shikoku, 1,100 yen, including tax. And this copy of Super Mario Kart from a branch of Book Off in Okayama, it was Okayama City, 990 yen, including tax. So that's a good illustration that pricing is not equal across all stores. So it does pay to shop around a bit, kind of thing. Like, don't jump at the very first copy that you see of something. So, but yeah, pricing has increased, but I think that's supply and demand a little bit there. But there are good bargains to be had out there, as I will talk about here. So, yeah. Anything more to say on that? No, because I'm going to move on to my third reality checkpoint, which is availability. Okay, so availability is very much connected to pricing, because if you have a super rare item that was out of print like 25 years ago, it's going to be expensive. Now, it's a little bit connected more to priciness, but I want you to understand that when I consider something to be good value, I am purely looking at it from the point of view of like, I get paid in Japanese yen, I pay taxes in Japanese yen, I pay for everything in Japanese yen. I never look at something going like, well, it's X amount of yen, so what's that in dollars, or what's that in pounds, or what's that in euros. It's always about what's its yen value. And that's how I consider whether something is expensive, moderately priced, or like, wow, I've lucked into finding a bargain here. So I think that's a slightly different perspective than maybe some people give on YouTube, because say for example your primary currency is US dollar. Today the yen has finally sunk to the 160 yen approximately to the US dollar, which is amazing, but then the yen has been on a downward trend for at least a couple of years now, if not longer. So because I'm not converting things back into dollars and then comparing like, wow, this game would be this much if I bought it in the UK, or if I bought it in France, or I bought it in Australia or America or whatever kind of thing. You know, I'm looking at it purely like, that seems very expensive for Japan kind of thing, or that seems very good for Japan kind of thing. So that's the perspective I come from. So availability, how is availability? So firsthand, I have seen in Nagoya that the Surugaya branch there has seen a lot of its Super Famicom box software sell. But other aspects of it seem to be much the same. For example, Game Boy seems to be about the same as it always was there. Other systems like PC Engine seem to be much the same. Cartridge only Famicom and Super Famicom seems pretty much along the lines of what I've seen before. So it's a bit of both in that situation. Lashing Bang in Nagoya as well, in the Akamon area, same area as what Surugaya is in, and Super Potato and others. Lashing Bang is just not worth visiting in Nagoya anymore for retro games. It's just crap. And that has changed. They used to have some quite interesting stuff in there from time to time. So yeah, I have seen firsthand that in the big cities there has been a change in that situation. Likewise, anecdotally on Twitter or X, I saw somebody post that the Surugaya store there, which I visited about 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, 2021. Shit, time's flying. So I haven't actually been back there since then. But when I went there, they had the first floor and the second floor. The second floor, using American English, okay, basically had character goods as well and other hobby sort of goods, like, you know, the kind of stuff you get in Gachapon and that kind of stuff. But they did have like Saturn, Mega Drive, PC Engine, and probably other stuff like FM Towns and other sort of more esoteric stuff on the second floor. I heard on Twitter that that now has been reduced just to one floor, and that's looking a bit sparse in places as well. So there has clearly been a change. I've also seen it firsthand in Osaka's Surugaya, for example. I was there twice last year. The first time I was just like, nah. But I did come away with one really cool little quirky RPG actually, which I'm looking forward to showing on a channel that I'm launching soon called Saki Endo's Rubbish Heap. Get the right name of the channel. So I'll talk about that at the end of the video, because I think a lot of you are going to be really interested in that. So, but yeah, it was okay though. Reasonable amount of stock. But when I went back there in November, I was there with Tim from the Team Pandora YouTube channel. Go and check out his channel as well, because he has an amazing range of videos covering all sorts of topics, from Amiga Minis, PC Minis, gaming handhelds, all this kind of stuff. Really good deep dives and stuff. So, and you can trust his information because he knows his mini PCs. Mini onions? That sounds a bit wrong, saying that Tim knows his mini onions. Anyway, this was supposedly about availability, wasn't it? But I did notice there had been quite a significant change. So Super Famicom had been greatly reduced in that Surugaya store in Osaka. This was in Denden town, by the way. So yeah, the big cities, there has been I would say some change in availability. But when you get outside of those big places again, and like I say, you go to the provincial cities like I mentioned,
Winnersh,
and smaller places than that,
Burfield,
the situation is a lot more variable. This is going to slightly lead into my general tips section of this video, but one of the things that you'll find is that I don't think it's worth your while going to the really out of the way places. A good example of this would be that I was travelling through Ehime Prefecture in Shikoku, and I was passing through Ozu City in Ehime because the next morning I was catching a ferry across to Kyushu. And so I popped into a hard of store that I drove past. I was like, oh, that's cool, because eat some ramen in the town, I was going to go and visit the castle and go to the onsen and all these kinds of things. So I thought I'll drop in there. And whilst they had interesting stock, it was a very small range. So, for example, they had a couple of copies of Granada for the Mega Drive, and they had Game Tengoku for the Saturn, all boxed and complete. And you don't usually see those, to be honest with you. But the pricing was identical to what Surugaya was asking for in-stock items of the same on their website. So what I'm saying is that it's not worth your while hiring a car, paying tolls if you're using the tolled expressways, and lodging to drive to all these out of the way places, because I think this is the advice I'm going to give you in the general tips, but it's not worth your while. You're much better off, you know, say going to the more provincial cities, the smaller second tier cities, Niigata, Aomori City, Morioka, Sendai, all these kinds of, you know, sort of maybe your 300,000 plus population centres, because, yeah, not every store is going to be great, but they're going to have, on balance, more for you to look at, and there's a lot more to do there besides going to second-hand stores. You'll have castles and onsen and shrines and museums and art galleries and wonderful restaurants to visit and lots of nice walks that you can do and maybe day excursions and stuff like that. So it's much more worth your while going to those places than it is driving around the Japanese countryside, the Inaka. Because, yeah, you may luck into something great, but it's going to be far and few between in my experience. And that is based directly off my experience. That's not me bullshitting to you saying, like, don't go here because secretly it's... No, really it isn't. I've spent a month travelling around a lot of these areas that people might think might be good places to go to, and there really isn't much going on there in terms of availability of games. I had much better luck in the bigger cities, your Kagashimas, your Miyazakis, your Oitas, and this kind of places. Okay, so availability is okay. Now, the last point I want to mention on availability, one of the reasons why these second-hand stores have depleting stock other than demand is because it's well known here in Japan that these second-hand stores don't pay very good prices for goods that you sell to them. So a lot of these second-hand stores will also be known as kaitori-ten, which basically just means like basically a buying shop, essentially. So because they've got to make a profit on it. And the only reason why people will generally sell to kaitori-ten these days tends to be either because it's so specialist and that they might actually get a good price on something because it just won't sell on the internet kind of thing. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, you know, they just want to get rid of stuff, and that's quite rare. Because most people in Japan these days know that they're going to get much better return, you know, like a much better price for their goods if they sell on Yahoo auctions, or more importantly, Mercari. So Mercari is like Gumtree or Craigslist kind of idea. It's like a eBay but not shit. Yeah, and people sell stuff on there. I sell stuff on Mercari, so that's obviously having an effect on the availability of stuff in second-hand stores, because people are just going to be like, well, yeah, I could sell King of Dragons for the Super Famicom to Book Off for 2,000 yen, and they will sell it for like 18,000 or something. Or I can put it on Mercari, list it for, I don't know, 12,000 yen, and it will probably be snapped up just like that. So, yeah, it's still under market value, inverted commas, but they're still going to get a better return, and that's what people do. So that is definitely having an effect on the availability of stock in second-hand stores, in my experience. Okay, so that's availability. I now want to move on to the general tips section of this video. Okay. I'll give it a rest. Well, that's not true, is it? Okay, so general tips. Okay, so I touched upon one in the availability section of this video. So my advice to you is don't go to the extremes of hiring cars, booking accommodation, paying tolls and all the rest of it to travel around the deepest of rural Japan unless you've got much more to do besides looking at hard off and other second-hand stores, because frankly these stores do not have, you know, piles of games that nobody has ever discovered before. That's just my experience. I've only ever known one store that happened to be the closest second-hand store from, like, not hard off or book off kind of idea, or surugaya or super potato kind of idea. And that was Yorozuya in Morioka, and that was amazing. I mean, it might still be, I don't know. I don't live in that part of Japan anymore. But most of these places, which are out of the way, yeah, they may have a branch of book off or hard off, but usually the availability in these places is very small. Like, for example, if you was to say, well, I'm going to go to Aira in Kagoshima, they've got a couple of branches of book off there or something like that. And they've also got a manga soko, manga warehouse, which is a chain of second-hand stores in Kyushu. But there really isn't much there. How do I know that? Well, I went there, but that's because I was travelling through. I was doing much more besides looking at these places. You know, I was going to onsen and castles and museums and shrines and lakes and doing a bit of hiking and all sorts of things, skating, and yeah, I was doing a lot more than, you know, sort of just looking around second-hand stores. But if you was to basically say, like, well, we're going to hire a car, we're going to drive, blah, 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 it really isn't worth your while. And what I'd recommend is that if you are going to go off the beaten track, and, you know, for you going to some of these second-hand stores is quite important to you, and if you was to answer the question, would you be disappointed if you went somewhere and it was crap? If the answer is yes, then, well, don't do this. But if you're like, well, it doesn't matter, then going to what I call the second tier, the more provincial cities of Japan, like your 300,000 population plus centres, is probably the better of the ideas than going to the middle of nowhere. So I'm talking about places like Kagoshima and Oita and Miyazaki, and I've already talked about that at the top of this video. So that's my recommendation. Don't go hiring cars and travelling off into the middle of nowhere. It's really not worth your while. Unless, of course, like I say, you've got lots more to do besides other than retro game shopping. Next general bit of advice is that a lot of places will not deliver to you if you don't have a Japanese address. So if you're coming to Japan and you're staying somewhere like a hotel, or maybe you're staying at an Airbnb, you might be able to get a package delivered to where you're staying. So always worth checking, because if you can, you should be able to sign up to things like Mercari and Yahoo auctions, and also order from Surugaya whilst you're here. Now, if the thrill of the chase of actually finding something in the wild doesn't actually bother you so much, and you've got money on the hip, well, why not just go on Surugaya's website and just order it from there if they've got it, you know, because by the time you spent all this money travelling around Japan, you'd have probably have spent what you're going to pay for something on Surugaya anyway, if not a hell of a lot more. So, now obviously, people will be doing much more than just shopping for retro video games when they come to Japan, or at least I hope so anyway, because this country has so much to offer. But, yeah, it's not worth spending all that money doing that kind of thing. So, yeah, you'll have these options available to you. Now, this does require some Japanese knowledge, but then you can also use things like Google Translate and DeepL and so forth that really help you as regards navigating the registration on these websites. So do consider that as an option, I think. What's this? Hey, no. Ooh, don't know why that started playing. Anyway, so let's move on to my pickups from my recent trip, which I've been talking about in this video. So I'm going to hopefully remember the prices, where I bought them and why I bought them in a way. So let's start off with PC Engine. Now, I have had a PC Engine now for about, 6-7 years. I can't remember now. And Actually, it was a chap who I'm helping find some Super Famicom games that was instrumental in helping me in obtaining a PC Engine when I was still living in the UK. So, and one of my favourite games of all time has always been R-Type, and when I first played the port for the PC Engine, I was absolutely blown away, because up until that point, I think I tended to play the Commodore 64 version. I'm one of those people that, I might have said it in the review, but the Amiga port is so-so to me. Anyway, it's certainly nothing compared to what it is on the PC Engine anyway. So, in Japan, the R-Type release was split over 2 hue cards, so stages 1 through 4 was on R-Type 1, and stages 5 through 8 was on R-Type 2, so not to be confused with the actual R-Type 2. And very kindly, this was the game that I was given with the PC Engine. I mean, obviously I paid for the PC Engine, I didn't get it for free, but it came with it. But I've always wanted to pick up, obviously, the second hue card, because then I've got the full game. Now, this is a game that was roughly about 3,500 yen about 3 years ago. I saw it in that branch of Suruga in Kyoto, and I turned it down at the time. It's now probably somewhere closer to 7,000 yen, if not more, boxed and so forth. So, I've been kicking myself for some time, because I don't want to pay that much for it, but I still want to get hold of it. So I've managed to track this copy down in Okayama City. I paid 3,000 yen plus tax for this, so that was an amazing deal. So very happy with that. It's all complete. It's not, you know, I mean, the hue card is absolutely great. There's no, you know, Tanaka-san or whatever written on the back of it. Manual's got a few little rumples in it, but nothing severe. The case has got a few cracks in it, but you know, what doesn't that use is like a dual case design these days. So that was a really good pickup. And by the way, Chinamini, this was a game that I picked up in Nara Prefecture in Yamato Koriyama City around about this time last year, actually. It's a year ago now, from a book-off store. And yeah, I don't think this needs any introduction. Amazing port on the PC Engine. And it generally goes for around about 6,000 yen, I think, these days, boxed complete for the PC Engine. It may have gone up, but I haven't looked for a while now, because obviously I've obtained it. Anyway, I love Outrun, and not on the Amiga though, that sucks, but it's fantastic on the PC Engine. And I paid 2,700 yen for this. Now, sadly, that store, since then, because I revisited probably sometime around about October or November of last year, has put its prices up quite markedly. So I scored this and a Super Famicom game, Magical Drop, for very good prices. So that was a very good pickup. I just wanted to mention that one. But back purely onto the games that I picked up on my recent travels. So first of all is Dr. Mario. Now, I don't buy boxed Game Boy software. So why did I buy this? So basically, I've always been a fan of the really early Japanese Game Boy packaging. It's really small and cute. It really complements the system. Yeah, it doesn't go for the TurboGrafx school of design, you know, big and bulky. I like these cute boxes, but Game Boy games can be really expensive boxed. So I only pick these up when I see them for a really good price. And there's only a handful that I'm looking out for. So I've already found Yakuman, because I'm that weird person that likes Mahjong, tennis, golf. What's the other one I've got? Tetris. I think that's the other ones. And of course I picked up Dr. Mario in Okayama. In the book off that I found Super Mario Kart there for 900 yen. So it's not perfect, but it's in really good condition overall, I would say. It's all complete. So that was a good one. So Okayama City, a really nice place to visit as well. Nice castle, and they've got the Korakuen Gardens there, which is one of Japan's most reputed gardens. Well worth visiting. So yeah, Okayama City, nice place to visit. So what should I choose next? Okay, we'll go with Wagyan Paradise. This is a really nice platformer, third in the series on the Super Famicom. There was 3 other Wagyan games on the Famicom, but this is the last of the Wagyan games as far as I know. It's a platformer. It's quite easy because it's a children's game, but it's incredibly colourful, beautiful design, and some of the best music that you're going to hear on the Super Famicom. Really great game. Goes for about 2,000 yen these days, complete in box with manual in Japan. So I paid 1,100 yen including tax for this, which was a really good deal. So really happy with that, because I've been looking out for the Wagyan games for a while and I was just waiting for the right price. You know, patience is what wins the day. Next is, let's go for something quirky here, Wedding Peach. This is an anime manga property. Quite a late-ish release for the Super Famicom, 1995, so the Saturn and the PlayStation was out by this time. So it's a game that I don't often see here in Japan. Certainly can't remember the last time I saw it boxed, but it's a multi-tap game, a bit like a Mario Party game because it's like mini games. Probably not as good as Mario Party, to be fair, but I have this thing because like I only buy for the Super Famicom and the Game Boy on the whole, with a couple of rare exceptions on the PC Engine there. But I have this thing like, if it uses one of the Super Famicom's peripherals, like the mouse or a multi-tap, I get very interested in those games because they're a little bit quirky, a little bit different. And this is one such 5-player compatible game with the multi-tap. So I thought this was quite a good pickup. I found this in Miyazaki City at a second-hand store there, which was fantastic. Really lovely staff, explained everything and beautifully organised in there. One of my favourite second-hand stores that I've ever been to. The guy who helped me on both occasions that I visited was just an absolute gent. 3,500 yen. Pretty good. It's probably quite close to what you'd pay in another store, to be honest with you. I wouldn't necessarily describe this as a super bargain. But I think it's interesting, and I like interesting, slightly off-piste games. So, yeah, really happy with that one. Next, let's go to... this was also from the store that I was just talking about in Miyazaki City. This is Ganbare Goemon 3, but there's no game in it. It is just box only. It does have the plastic tray for the manual and the game, but I don't own those at the moment. But my idea has always been that if I can get a game that's in good condition, you know, the cartridge only, and there's a good chance of me finding a box and manual for it, that's the route that I tend to take these days, because it often ends up much cheaper to do it that way than it does to buy it complete. You just need a lot of patience. Like sometimes I can wait 2-3 years before I complete a game in that way. So they, in the same place that I bought Wedding Peach, they had this for 740 yen. It does very clearly say Keisu Nomi, but as I say, the Tein-san who helped me, maybe he was the shacho, I'm not sure, the manager, but he was an absolute gent. He took the time to explain this is not the whole game. I'm just like, daijoubu desu. It's okay, I understand, I could... But he still made a point of showing me and all the rest. I was just like, thank you very much. It's very kind, you know. So that was really awesome. So 740 yen for a good condition Ganbare Goemon box. I'll easily be able to find the cartridge and the manual for around about 2,000 yen. So for just under 3,000 yen, I should be able to complete this game, which is a bit cheaper than what it goes for complete these days. So another nice little pickup. It's awesome these second-hand stores tend to sometimes have manuals and boxes and other little gubbins and accessories that you can sort of rifle through, and that's what I like about it. I love that aspect of it, that, you know, nothing has gone to waste here. It's that mottainai ethos, isn't it? You know, waste not, want not is how I translate that into English, I think, so mottainai. Okay, let's finish up the games that I picked up in Miyazaki City. So this is Ikari no Yosai, and this was released as Forbidden Zone, I think, in the West. I'm pretty sure it was. I'll correct it in the video description and on screen if necessary. But this is a really good action game. Probably not as fast paced as Contra is on the Super Famicom. But it's, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's quite a short game. There was a couple of games on the Game Boy as well, which are really good as well. But yeah, you don't often see this one out and about in Japan, both loose and boxed. Although I'm sure I did see another copy. That might have been on Mercari recently. But regardless, it's a nice one to happen into, because Jaleco actually started releasing some pretty good games on the Super Famicom. I mean, they were always a bit of a hit and miss company, but when they had a good idea, they did have the capability to execute it quite well. So, yeah, it plays a bit like a top-down sort of Contra game where you've got to methodically work your way through the various stages of the game and so forth. So, yeah, it's a really good little action game. I probably paid on the nose value-wise for this, 4,500 yen. But it's just unusual to see it, and I just thought, well, this is such a great store. You know, and I just thought, yeah, I want to give these guys my money kind of thing. They had been so helpful to me, because what it was is I had gone in there the day before because I had a bunch of laundry to do, and I thought, oh, there's a second-hand place next door. That's lucky. So I went in there and I was just like, oh my god, I've actually found where stuff is available to buy in Miyazaki City, because apart from this place, it wasn't very good there. Certainly changed in the last couple of years since I was last in Miyazaki City anyway. Anyway, so I bought a couple of games that day, and then I went skating, and then I came back the following day because I thought, do you know what, I'm going to pick up Ikari no Yosai. And yeah, that was well worth doing, because my experience was from the previous day that the guy helping at the checkout at the register was just so awesome and so kind and so friendly, that I thought, yeah, this is a nice place to spend my money, you know. So yeah, that was a good pickup. So, what should I go to next? Let's go with Major Title. This is a golf game, if you couldn't tell. It's from IRM, keeping the R-Type connection there. Known as the IRM Skins game in the North American region. This, for my money, is probably one of the two best golf games on the Super Famicom or Super Nintendo. The other being Jumbo Ozaki's Hole-in-One Golf, or Howl's Hole-in-One Golf as it is outside of Japan. This one's a bit more arcadey orientated, I would say. And the reason why this one's interesting is because some of you may know that a bunch of IRM split off to form another company called Naxat. Is that right, Naxat? Nazca. I was going to say that didn't sound right. Formed Nazca Corporation, and you might know them from Metal Slug. But they are also the same company behind Neo Turf Masters. So I think there is some connection between that kind of thing. Now, this is not as good as Neo Turf Masters, but it's in the same kind of vein kind of thing. And I find it really fun. Now, I can't stand golf in real life, both to watch it on TV or the thought of doing 18 holes of golf just, oh. But as a really relaxing time, I love playing golf on my Game Boy, and yeah, this is a really good game. And the story with this one is that it took me 4 years to track down a boxed copy in a second-hand store. I missed out on a few copies on Yahoo auctions over the years, you know, and yeah, I noticed recently on Suragaya that they'd got a copy in stock for around about 2,200 yen. But I walked into a second-hand store in Tokushima on Shikoku, and this was pretty much the last place that I was going to go to on my vacation, and there it was, just on the shelf. They didn't have much else. They might have only had about another 8 or 9 boxed Super Famicom games, but it was just sat there, and I was just like, oh my god, I have finally found it. It's in pretty good condition, actually. Being a black box, it's a bit scuffed, but as I said, I'm not a condition collector. As long as it's fair and the price is good, I'm okay with that. So this is, in my condition, a good condition copy. The manual and the cartridge itself are fantastic. But I paid 2,000 yen for this, so pretty much on the nose. Might be slightly expensive, but it was like, it's going home with me. So sometimes maybe I slightly overpay, but hey, it's got a little story to that one. And talking of that story in Tokushima, I also have a Switch. It's my modern console. I don't have a PlayStation 4 or 5 or an Xbox. And yeah, I love playing games on my Switch as well. I'm not just a retro gamer, I just like games in general. And I picked up Sonic Origins Plus, because for the longest time I've wanted to play some classic Sonic on my Switch, and I didn't want to do the online stuff. I prefer to still get the physical cartridge if I can, and this was 2,200 yen. Not difficult to buy brand new for maybe 2,700, but yeah, I'll take the 400 or 500 yen saving. Math never was my strong point, but yeah, that was a really good pickup from that store. And it turned out that this second-hand store in Tokushima City was easily the best pricing for Switch games anywhere I've been in Japan. Now, I've not been everywhere in Japan, but even first-party games were quite a bit cheaper there than they were anywhere else. So, yeah, if I had a lot more money, I would have cleaned out there, shall we say, that day, but I didn't, so c'est la vie. But I also found the Rockman Zero and Zex collection, Zex being the Japanese pronunciation for ZX or ZX. I've never really heard anybody pronounce it as Zex outside of Japan. You sometimes, when I watch Japanese videos, they'll say Rockman Zex kind of thing, because that's how it's pronounced here, and maybe it's how it's meant to be pronounced outside of Japan. But yeah, anyway, so this is Rockman Zero collection. That's the first through to the 4th game on a GBA. It was released on a DS, actually, on a Zero collection on there. But it also includes the Zex games, the ZX and ZX Advent, is it? Or something like that, on the DS. I've never played the DS games, so I'm looking forward to that. But that was a really good pickup, 3,000 yen. So yeah, really happy to pick that up, because this one's a little bit harder to come by than the Rockman X collections that you can find, and the Rockman XE or EXE, or however you pronounce it, you know, the Battle Network games. So the Rockman X and Battle Network collections are quite easy to come into in Japan, but this one not so much. 3,000 yen paid for that. Same second-hand store in Tokushima, including tax, so that was good. But possibly the best pickup of them all, apart from major title in that store in Tokushima, is this, the Rockman Classics Collection 1 and 2. Now, I own all of the Rockman games for the Famicom, so 1 through 6, and I also own Rockman 7 for the Super Famicom. But this also includes 7, 8, 9 and 10. Sorry, 8, 9 and 10. I just said that I'd own 7 for the Super Famicom. But yeah, so this is really awesome to have all of these on one accessible cartridge, meaning that I can basically play these on my Switch when I'm on the road or whatever. Quite an expensive one to pick up now, because I think it's out of print. 5,000 yen paid for it, including tax. That was a really good pickup, very happy with that. So, okay, we're winding down here. Let's go on to this one. This is Acrobat Mission, a shoot 'em up for the Super Famicom. It's very average on the Super Famicom, even though the Super Famicom or Super Nintendo is not regarded as like a shmup machine. It does have some good ones, but amongst them, Acrobat Mission is certainly mid-tier. But it's no D-Force or Raiden Densetsu, which are hopeless on the Super Famicom, if you ask me, because I think both were developed by Micronics. But Acrobat Mission only ever got a port to the Super Famicom. It was never published to anything else, and that in itself makes it quite interesting. It's originally a UPL arcade, I think. Does it actually say on it? Yeah, I'm not sure. It probably, I mean, it was ported by Teichiku, but I don't know about. I think it was a UPL arcade. Again, I'll correct that in the video itself if that's the case. But yeah, so this is very mid-tier on the Super Famicom. But if it was on the Amiga, it'd be considered an all-time classic, amazing shoot-'em-up. Ooh, burn, burn. So, sorry, it's just that people keep on going on about Xenon 2 being really, or Xenon 2, or however you pronounce that, it's being a really good game on the Amiga, and it's not. It's terrible. You know, but anyway, Acrobat Mission is okay. It's quite tough, but it's okay. But I've seen box complete copies of this game sell even on Mercari for like 8,000 yen. I'm just like, really? It's not that common a game to come across in Japan. I can't remember the last time I saw a box copy. Loose I've seen from time to time for around about the 3,000 yen mark. I found this in Kochi City, in Kochi Prefecture on Shikoku, 1,500 yen plus tax, so 1,650 from book off. So it goes to prove that not all book offs are the same. Some do have quirky, interesting items just out on the shelf. So that was a really good pickup for the price. And yeah, it's a bit interesting, isn't it? A little bit different. So we're beginning to close out the video now. So continuing the book off theme, because this is from another branch of book off, not the same one as I found Acrobat Mission in, but this was also from Kochi City. And this goes to prove my point that whilst many book off stores have begun to sort of level out their pricing, same thing with hard off, this particular branch of book off hadn't. Now, this is not a mint condition copy of Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy II as it was in the West, but it's fair to good. And I paid 1,100 yen plus tax, so 1,210 yen. And I've begun to pick up more RPGs for the Super Famicom now that my Japanese has got to the point where I can actually enjoy the game quite a bit without having to reach for the phone every 5 seconds. So, but knowing that this is the kind of price that this game used to go for all the time in Japan, I really wasn't willing to spend 2,300 yen for it, which seems to be the standard price for it these days. So I knew if I hung on, I'd eventually find a copy for what I used to see it for 4 years ago. And I did, so that was a good pickup. So, not bad, huh? And the last game that I want to talk about that I picked up is this. This is Macross Scramble Valkyrie, another shoot 'em up for the Super Famicom, reputed to be one of the best on the system, and I certainly agree with that. And I found this in a branch of Hard Off in the middle of Kagoshima City. Yeah, not some out of the way place. It was, you could see Sakurajima. It was very much downtown area. It's missing its manual, but I could read the Japanese. I understood that. And this has become a very expensive game in Japan. I think Surugaya now wants about 33,000 yen for this. Way more than I'm ever going to pay for a game on the Super Famicom, even this game. But they had it there for 11,000 yen, including tax. And I have not seen this game for that kind of price for a very long time. I know it's missing the manual, but I know that eventually, give or take a year or two, I will track down that manual and complete this game as a result. In that terms, I'll complete it by actually playing it as well. But I'll be able to put together the complete, manual box game copy for much less than what people are charging or expecting for the game these days. So it goes to prove that you really don't have to go. I mean, I know Kagoshima is a little bit out of your way, but it's not difficult to get an internal flight to Kagoshima, and then you'll be able to enjoy the wonderful sights that are available in that part of Kyushu. So, and it is well worth visiting if you ask me. But yeah, this is a really awesome pickup for the price, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the things that I managed to find on my travels. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up the video there. I'd love to hear any of your comments about the video, any questions that you've got, or anything that you disagree profoundly with, or whether you're a Chaz and Dave fan as well, like myself. But that was that song that was playing, by the way, in case you don't know. Yeah, but that's about it for this video. I just wanted to mention that I am starting a new channel in June of this year called Saki Endo's Rubbish Heap. Now, it's not going to be presented by myself because, frankly, I don't think I have it in me to make a funny channel like that. There's something that happens to me when I'm on camera where my naturally light-hearted and quite jokey nature just won't come out on camera for some reason. The idea of the new channel is that it will be presented by my three main characters from my manga Future Savers, Saki, Hisao and Kaito, and it will be about whether you can enjoy the game having no knowledge of any Japanese whatsoever, whether you know a little because you're learning the language, or whether you know a bit more because you're learning the language. To what degree would I say that you can play this game to enjoy it, kind of thing? Like, for example, can you buy Outrun for the PC Engine with no Japanese knowledge and enjoy it? Or can you buy Final Fantasy IV for the Super Famicom with zero Japanese whatsoever and enjoy it? So that's the focus of the channel. It will be much shorter, snappier videos, certainly compared to this one, roughly averaging about 4 minutes in length, which will give a short review of the game, as well as its approachableness with regards to Japanese and so forth. And I aim to showcase some of the games that people just never talk about on YouTube, or, well, maybe you might find it if you Google it or search for it on the internet. But I'm going to be looking mostly at retro systems, including Famicom, PC Engine, Super Famicom, Game Boy Color, and that kind of ilk. Probably not including things like PlayStation 2 and later kind of stuff, but occasionally I might venture into that, including maybe some Switch games as well. Who knows, but the emphasis is mostly going to be on 80s and 90s Japanese retro games, shall we say. So if you want to subscribe to that channel, the links are all in the video description. Go and check that out. Like I say, the first video will be launching sometime in June of this year. And yeah, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want to support the channel a bit more, I've got some other links in there for like Patreon and stuff like that. But otherwise, there's no pressure. The main objective of this video is to try and help you out. And yeah, if you're coming to Japan, like I say, I hope you have an amazing trip here. yeah, I'm going to leave it there, and yeah, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye bye.